about an appeal that Mr. Schmitz is making. And Mr. Garganese would like to make a couple of comments here before we go any further.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairperson. Just a couple of comments. As you indicated, this is case number 18-268.
Right.
This is not your run-of-the-mill code enforcement action. This is an appeal from a nuisance abatement action that's been taken by city building official and code enforcement officials pursuant to the unsafe building code that has been adopted by reference by the city in accordance with Chapter 82. The purpose of this meeting is and scope of this hearing is to hear an appeal from the property owner pursuant to the unsafe building code. The scope of the hearing is limited to affording the appellant a reasonable opportunity to be heard only on those specific matters raised in his appeal. And as this hearing progresses, you will see that there is a notice of appeal stating forth the basis of the property owner's appeal. At the end of the hearing, of course, just like any other Code Enforcement Board matter, the board is going to be weighing competent substantial evidence, which of course is such evidence to establish a basis of fact from which the fact at issue can be reasonably inferred. Such relevant evidence as a reasonable mind would accept as adequate to support a conclusion. In addition, the Code Board will be guided by the Unsafe Building Code, which does address evidence and states that such competent substantial evidence is related to evidence that a reasonable person accustomed to rely on in the conduct of serious affairs. This is, again, an unsafe building code action, which of course is a serious matter. Lastly, once the board weighs the evidence and renders its findings of fact and conclusions of law, the purview of the board is to accept or reject the appeal in whole or in part based on those findings in fact and conclusions of law that you have determined based on the evidence. So it's my understanding that staff will customarily give you a brief, not a brief, but a presentation about the background of this particular case, and then the appellant will be afforded an opportunity to present his appeal as stated in his notice appeal that is in the record. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Palmer, are you presenting tonight, or Mr. Robinson?
Yes, ma'am, I will be.
Or is it tag team?
There you go.
I have a, before you speak, do we need to swear anyone in tonight other than Mr. Schmitz?
Yeah, I think yes, we need to swear in everyone that's going to be providing testimony.
So if you're going to provide testimony tonight before this case and this case only, please stand and be sworn in by our city attorney.
Okay, please raise your right hand. Affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Okay, you all are duly sworn.
Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to submit Exhibit 1 and 2. Exhibit 2 is the PowerPoint you're about ready to see. Exhibit 1 is basically the stuff you've already received.
So you've got those and you're going to mark those, Ms. Ginger? They're already marked? Exhibit 1 and 2. 1 and 2, okay.
The information you said that they've already received, is that the agenda package that you published?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes,
okay.
Sorry about that. The agenda packet. First off, I'd like to just mention some people for the city that are here present, and the board can answer or ask them any questions that may pertain to them. The building official, Mike German, Community Development Director, David Dickey, the Economic Development Director, Todd Morley, Infrastructure Maintenance Supervisor, Tim Carlisle, City Arborist, Tim Davis, the Certified Indoor Environmental Consultant, who was the one who did the mold report.
Yes. He
can be reached via phone if we need to.
Okay.
He's not in, he is out of town right now. And we also have a Mr. Campbell for factual witness, as a factual witness only. He can attest to the conditions that he's been living near. Okay, this is case number 18268. Address is 305 Surf Drive. The legal and parcel ID are on the board. Violations for unsafe building, imminent hazard, public nuisance. Permission to enter his property was sent on, was posted on the property 9/21 of 2018 and City Hall is required. Notice of intent to execute inspection warrant was posted on the property 10/1 of 2018 and City Hall. Notice of violation was sent on 10/30/2018 with a return receipt of 11/1/2018. Notice of hearing was posted on the property 1/7/2019 and City Hall as required. This is the property in question. I'm sure that the board members remember the property, correct? Just making sure. On 11/30 of 2017, a notice of violation was sent to the property owner regarding a hazardous pool. This is a separate case. This is just building background. The pool was in such a dilapidated condition that it had become a life safety issue. On 5/22 of 2018, due to the property owner's refusal to bring the hazardous pool into compliance, the city gave notice to the property owner the pool would be demolished beginning May 29th, 2018. On 5/29/2018, Kinley, Florida LLC, with the property owner present, began demolition of the pool. During the demolition of the pool, the building official observed the roof of the house was more dilapidated than originally thought. The building official believed the roof of the house could be a life safety issue. 9/21 of 2018, the building official via certified letter requested consent from the property owner to enter the property located at 305 Surf Drive to inspect the interior of the main dwelling and all exterior portions of the property to include all accessory structures located on the premises to determine if all structures on the property were structurally sound. 10/1 of 2018, staff and the city attorney petitioned the Circuit County Court of the 18th Judicial Circuit for an administrative inspection warrant, which was approved and signed. Staff posted the notice to execute inspection warrant on the property at 305 Surf Drive, along with certified mailing to the property owner's address listed on the Brevard County Property Appraiser's website. 10/3 of 2018, staff along with the city attorney, fire marshal, mold inspector, and the Brevard County Sheriff's Department executed the warrant at 1300. A video was taken before and after the inspection. The property was secured prior to staff departing. On 10/5 of 2018, the building official posted the property as unsafe and unfit for human occupancy. On 10/13 of 2018, staff received the mold assessment protocol from Home Mold Inspections Plus. 10/30 of 2018, the building official issued a notice of violation to the property owner, outlining all violations observed during the inspection and the required remedial action. 10/17, the property owner submitted in writing a records request including all correspondence with any form, since January 1st, 2017. 11/13, the property owner contacted staff in writing requesting an extension on the time frames listed on the notice of violation. Staff contacted the property owner and requested a meeting. 11/15, staff met with the property owner and went over all requirements to bring the property into compliance. Staff also discussed time frames within the notice of violation with the property owner and informed him if he would like to appeal the notice of violation, he needed to submit the appeal within 30 days. 11/15 continued. Staff also informed the property owner if he planned on submitting an appeal, he should still begin cleaning the exterior portion of the property to get as much done as possible before the appeal hearing. 11/30, the property owner in writing submitted his appeal of the notice of violation. 1/7/2019, staff sent the property owner a notice of hearing along with posting the property.
And that's the meeting we are here for tonight.
Yes, ma'am. The first picture is going to be May 29th, 2018. This is the day that the pool was being removed, and this is what the building officials saw. And this is background substantiating the notice of violation. Once again, this is another view. This is a picture of the property during the original investigation, May 3rd of 2016. The reason I have this in here, you can tell how much more dilapidated the structure's become since 2016. And this is September 18th, 2018. And you can see where the roof, if you look at both pictures here, you can see how the roof of the house is even more dilapidated. I would like to show the video now of the inspection of the house. There's no sound to it, it's just a video.
And Brian, this was the inspection that took place during the execution of the search warrant?
Yes, sir.
And the power is onto the property? Do I see lights that are actually lit as your film is?
Yes, it is.
Fans turning and the power, therefore power's on?
Yes,
Okay.
the power is on.
Just one jack, the one we saw?
Yes.
Were you able to determine specifically what it's supporting?
No, ma'am.
At the garage?
Yes, ma'am. Real quickly, I would just like to inform the board that the Community Services Director, Joshua Surprenant, is here, and he can answer any questions after being sworn in regards to the video that you just watched.
Are there any questions about the video? Did I see a chimney on that house?
Yes. The next few slides.
Josh here?
He
Yes.
just came in.
Just one question. Just raise your right hand to be sworn in firm. Tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do. Can you just come up to the podium and just testify that you were the one, I believe, that took that video?
Should I say my name again? On the record, Joshua Surprenant, Community Services Director. I was the one that took the video before, during, and after the inspection.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian, I have one question.
Sure.
I noticed a fan going. Is there any, and it didn't appear that there was any potable water. Were any other systems in the house operative, meaning air conditioning or anything of that nature?
Not that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
Did you have to turn a breaker on to get the fans
Yeah.
going, or were they actually running when you went in?
They were actually running.
And at one point, did I see a photo of several rifles leaned up in a corner?
Yes.
What did you have to do to access the house?
The sheriff's department accessed the house.
Through
They
a door,
accessed it
through a doorway?
Yes, through the rear of the property.
Was it locked?
I think they went to access the door. I believe she informed me, the commander here informed me that she went to access the door, in other words, open the door, and the door fell in.
The door fell in.
Yes,
So the house was not secure, but there were guns in it.
yes.
Okay.
According to the Cape Canaveral commander
Yes,
of the BCSO.
thank you.
The next few slides are just the photos that were taken. If you have questions about the photos, we can answer those. The individuals that I've mentioned already all participated in the photos. This is the front of the property, the front door. I'm just gonna, if you see something you want to look at or you want questions about, please stop me. I'm gonna go through them. I have a lot of photos, so I'm gonna go through them kind of quickly. These first are only exterior, and then we'll go into the interior.
Is that a sprinkler? That PVC pipe? What is that?
I think it's just storage of PVC pipe.
It's possibly a piece of irrigation is what it looks like.
Irrigation
Stored
system?
up in the attic.
Okay. Sprinkler head for the yard.
How many people were living in the property?
I think that's going to be a question for Mr. Smits. At any time, did anyone enter the sheds?
Yes, yes, those were those where you saw the picture of the irrigation that the building official spoke
That
of.
was it. That was in the
inside
shed?
the shed, yes. And then this is today. If you have any questions for any of us city staff, you can ask them, or you can hear from the property representative.
Did, when you took pictures of the roof, did you walk that roof, the entire roof?
That's the building official.
Okay. We obviously saw areas of deteriorations. Did you notice other areas of softness in the roof throughout?
Yes, I walked very gingerly up there because of the fact that I wasn't sure what was exactly under me. And yes, anytime I got to something that felt soft, I backed up.
Very good. Thank you.
Question. Given that one of his aspects of appeal is funding, his need for funding, any idea what it's going to cost to repair this?
Please speak into the mic more, Mr. Clooney.
Is there any idea, does staff have any idea what it would cost, any ballpark to bring it into compliance?
I would have to defer to the building official on that.
Anybody here?
Yep. At this time, we don't really have an estimate of what it would cost to repair it. That's not something that I worked up yet.
A rough ballpark? I mean, is it 10,000, 100,000? I just wouldn't know.
Keeping in mind it has to come to the current code.
Understood. Well, to demolish it, number one, but then to bring it up to code, any idea?
I'll add Todd Morley, Economic Development Director, former building official with the city, but still currently certified as building official. Currently, the International Code Council they regularly publish building valuation data tables that give prices on a square foot basis for what it costs to build a new building. Currently, we're over $100 a square foot. I'm going to guess, I think it's in the neighborhood of maybe $110 per square foot. So we have a 2,771 square foot structure. If we were to multiply that times 115, we get an approximate cost for a new structure. And that's probably what it's going to take.
Say that number again, please.
2,771 square feet times $115 per square foot. And that's very ballpark.
I'm ballparking 325 grand.
That doesn't include taking the original one down.
And then what we've done in the past in other situations is we would say if there's something that is salvageable from that, say the slab.
Right.
You deduct the cost of a slab, which could be 15% possibly.
Is it my understanding that the 50% rule applies to the fair market value of the home?
You're referring to the 50% rule for the zoning code that says a non-conforming
Yes, sir.
structure? This is not a non-conforming structure from a zoning code perspective that I'm aware. I'm not sure that enters into it, but there is a 50% rule that applies for the level 3 alteration. It's a different book, a whole different scheme.
What is the zoning for that property?
I believe that's R1. But we can get into the level 3 alteration. The building official did an analysis on
And it's in your packet.
a code analysis and determined it would be a level 3 alteration. That invokes the 50% rule that perhaps you were asking about.
Yes, sir.
Mike, do you want to talk about that?
It's included in your packet, and I don't know if you reviewed it yet or not. What we did was we went through, or actually I went through and just evaluated it on a step-by-step basis, starting at a level, or actually at a repair, pushing it beyond a repair to a level 1. It exceeded a level 1, so I went to a level 2 and ended up with a level 3, which applies to work area that exceeds 50% of the building area. And it says the level alteration shall comply with chapter 7, 8, and 9. If you'll follow along, if you have that out.
It's here, Charlie.
What page was that?
It's after the last notification here.
Yeah, is your page number on there? Oh, you don't.
They're not numbered. But here's level 1, 2, 3.
Yep, I had that. I read that.
Yeah.
Do you know if there's insurance on the property? Does anybody have any information about that?
If there's what? I'm sorry?
Insurance on the property? Brian, do you have any idea if there's any insurance on the property? None at all?
I'm not aware of any.
No, ma'am, I'm not aware of any. I don't know.
Okay.
We did reach out to, for other information kind of related to where you're questioning about. We did talk to the Brevard County Property Appraiser's Office about the homestead status, and this is not currently a homesteaded property, and according to the property appraiser, nobody is living there, and nobody has lived there at the time.
I need, coming back to this clarification, your 50% rule applied to the square footage of the dwelling. My question is the 50% rule apply to the market value of the home?
Not with the existing building code. It strictly works with the area of the structure itself.
Okay.
Mr. Dickey, he's shaking his head. Mr. Dickey needs to tell us something.
I didn't Mr. Dickey, raise your right hand. If you do get sworn in, state your name and if you're going to tell the whole truth, not the truth, something you got.
I do. My name's Dave Dickey. I'm the Community Development Director for the city. And I think Mr. Hartley, our code does make references to a 50%, and that is related to the definition of destroyed in our zoning code. And the definition is 50% of the assessed value of a piece of property or I'll call it a third-party appraisal. And I think that may be what you're referring to.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So that would be it. So the appraised value, if a piece of property, if it costs more to fix a piece of property more than 50% of the assessed value. For an example, if a property is assessed at $100,000, if it costs $50,001 to restore it or to fix it, then by our code it's defined as destroyed.
But if I may, Madam
Yes,
Chairman,
sir.
but that's a zoning issue.
That's part of the zoning code.
Which is really not relevant this evening. I mean, that's in terms of whether or not you can rebuild a non-conforming structure.
That's correct.
As I understand, Mike, I read your report that's in the agenda. The 50% rule applies to the area of the structure for purposes of determining what level of repair must be conducted, in your opinion. And I read your analysis, and your opinion is that a level 3. Correct? Would have to be done?
That is correct.
And what does that mean?
That means that basically the structure is going to be brought back up into today's codes. That includes all wind resistance, electrical. The whole thing will have to be brought up to today's standards.
And he specifies by item what that is. The scope of the work will exceed 50% of the area of the structure, and then it goes on to specify what has to be done to bring those systems up to current codes.
that's what it would be.
Mr. Hartley, if I can clarify, I did look up the current ICC building valuation data. It is $118 and 45 cents per square foot. And that's the same value that we base our building permits on. So if somebody says I can build a house for $20,000, well, we're basing the permit on the ICC because that's
What was the square footage? 2,500?
2,771 square feet.
That's replacement cost.
No, that's, bear in mind, that is to build new
Right.
on a vacant lot.
That's new replacement.
Yes.
But for existing structure,
We would give credit.
you take
for-
the fair market value and assessed it based on the cost to bring it up to the conditions prior to the damage. Am I correct?
Well, that's not an option in this case because of the extent of the damage. We've heard the building officials
It
testify.
cannot be repaired.
It's going to have to come up to all new code.
I understand. I understand.
Anybody else have a question at this point? Or comment? Mr. Schmitz, would you like to step forward to the mic and let us hear from you, sir?
Okay, good evening. My name's Gerhard Schmitz. I'm the owner of the property in question, 305 Surf Drive. I'm not really here to challenge damage to the property. I came here basically to ask for a little bit more time to address the situation. I'd like to just begin with a little bit of my background, just to let you know how I got here. About 15 years ago or something, I was invested in real estate. I had rental properties, and someone in a company out west made an error in their computer and made up a W-2 form telling them that I had gotten $238,000 from them. And since I never declared that on my income tax because I never received it, 5 years later, the IRS came, slapped a lien on me, and I was battling them for 3.5 years, during which time all of the real estate boom came into effect, and I was unable to sell any real estate because the IRS would have simply seized the funds and closed the case. So I ended up just sitting there watching my real estate taxes double and even triple through all of the rental properties that I had at the time. And after the boom crashed, all of these properties were now selling below what I had even paid for them. After 3.5 years, the IRS acknowledged that it was a mistake and gave me credit, thank goodness. Actually, they didn't give me credit. They just put it on my credit report that it was settled, as if I had paid it. But anyway, the bottom line was during that 3.5 years, my 20 years of perfect credit became zero. Every credit card I had was dropped down to whatever I owed. I had lots of really good credit, and it was just totally trashed. And I was now in debt because now I owed on the real estate. So that's basically how I came into this whole situation. And I did sell off most of the properties, almost all of them, but I took a loss on almost everything. And what happened here, this was my home, and I guess now it's about 5 years ago. One of my friends, a dear friend of 25 years, had fallen down. She had broken her hip and had a knee replacement, and had requested, when she got out of therapy and everything, requested that I come spend the nights at her house because she had this fear of falling, and she did. She was unbalanced. She did fall several times, and there was no one around at night to assist her. So I agreed, and I would work at my house, do everything I would normally do in the daytime, and stay at her house overnight. Well, during the time, this lady was already 84 years old, and she had a number of ailments which progressed periodically. And as a result of that, my caregiving graduated to more intense occupation, actually. During, what is it? I was broke for one thing, so I was unable to make the repairs. Those first pictures that you saw when they did the pool area, that was the porch areas. Those are the porch beams sticking out. That was not the house itself. And I was unable to do any repairs. I tried, I got a permit at one time, but I couldn't raise the funds. And at the same time, I was being harassed by Homestead the exemption. I had to go and argue with them for one year, then they came back the next year, tried it again, and they came back this year, and we're still in an appeal on that. So I was fighting them, at the same time I was dealing with the code enforcement here, and at the same time I was broke. You know, I was no credit, nothing. So anyway, I went and I stayed with this lady at nighttime, coming back to my house every day, doing work during the day, whatever I had to do. I had another property on Merritt Island that suddenly I had re-inherited that was also ridiculously dilapidated. I had paid $40,000 for it, and code enforcement from the county came. This was 2015, I believe, and told me I had to fix that up. I found out that the person who had been living in there had moved out 8 months earlier rather. And now I had to go and fix up that place. I fixed up a little bit here and there, and then I just dumped the property for $10,000 to a neighbor just to get out of it because I had no more time to deal with anything. Now, when I began staying, I guess to move a little forward here, when Hurricane Irma came through, all of this damage is what occurred. The water was not inside the house prior to Hurricane Irma, but where the flat roof met the inclined roof, the porch had been damaged significantly, and the water, we had the southerly winds for 24 hours, and it just drove all of that water on the south half of the house, right under the shingles, and got into the living room area. And it was all along the border. It was on both porches, the front and the back, where the flat roof met the inclined roof. That transom that I put up, that was the very first thing when I came in, inspected after Hurricane Irma. I happened to have a couple of those. That was simply that the ceiling was bulging, the drywall was wet. And I happened to have this, and I had a nice sheet of paneling. And I put it up there just to keep the drywall from coming down. And then within a week, the drywall next to it came down. So, but anyway, I tried to just stop it, and then I just left it there. As far as, I don't know, I made the attempt, I think, to try to do what I could. The first room that these building officials went into, when they broke the back door, I have to question that the door was falling down. That door was pretty solid when I was there, but now it's all broken into pieces. So as far as I'm concerned, they broke the door down. But anyway, that first room that they came into was hit probably it was one of the hardest, that room and the living room. Unfortunately, that was a Eastern bedroom, which I had 15 years of a flea market booth with collectibles in it. And when the flea market, this was the Frontenac flea market, had a couple fires in 2005, I closed the booth and I would sell occasionally on their weekends or something, or on the weeks. But I had to take all of that merchandise. First I put it into storage, and I said, well, now I'm paying to have it stored. So I put it all into that back bedroom that I wasn't using, and it was nice and secure. And so that's why everything is stacked up. When you first come in there, you can't make heads or tails out of that, because I had old magazines from World War II in there. I had stained glass lamps. I had all sorts of things, collectibles that were in there. And almost all of it was destroyed. It got moldy, and I was picking it out bit by bit to get rid of it. When I did come in, I then did my evaluation, and since I had no money, I had a dual criteria when I went in. I had to see what I could salvage of my personal items. And I went into that back room, and I tried to salvage what I could. There were some things that were salvageable. None of the paper products were. But I basically had to grab what I could turn into cash, because I had no other income at the time. My Social Security income is it was at $923 a month, which is below the poverty level. And my bills were 4 times that much. So I was really in a bind. But anyway, when I went in, I cleaned up what I could, and I took out what I could possibly sell or salvage or even throw into scrap metal. A lot of the stuff that's in the rest of the house was stuff that got moved out of there. As I took stuff, I said, well, this is no good. I put it over here, and a lot of the rest of the house got a little messed up. And I did put those bins in order to trap any water that came in on the edges of the roof. As far as the guns you were talking about, those were all BB guns. That's all I had left. I don't have any firearms in there. They were old BB guns that I had from the flea market, and at this point they were so badly rusted, I don't even know if they're good for parts. They're still there, but I don't think they're even salvageable other than scrap metal. But in any case, when I began, after the hurricane, I immediately had to deal with other things. Of course, I examined the house too, and I saw things had come down and had to deal with that. But the lady's house also suffered some damage, not nearly as what I did, but she did have some damage. And at this point, she had already been diagnosed with cancer, and my gut feeling even at the time was that she was not going to survive another year. So what I did was basically concentrate on her, tried to make her life a little bit better, and I cleaned up her place more, because mine was an overwhelming task anyway. And in December of 2017 and January of 2018, it was the dry season. I did go into the house. I was able to, and I used liquid chlorine mixed with water, and I sprayed the mold that was there at the time, and that enabled me to work in the house, and I was able to do quite a bit of clean out. You may not know it from this, but I did do quite a bit, but again, a lot got shuffled around. In February of 2018, however, the lady's health began to deteriorate significantly, and each week became more intense. And during the entire spring of 2018, I could hardly ever get to my house. My duties to her became 24/7. She was suffering from a number of ailments. I had to give her pills. She took 20 pills a day, plus pain medication, and they kept upping the pain medication because the cancer made her more and more pain. And I had to take over the cooking, paying her bills, and basically take care of her completely 24/7. As a result of that, I wasn't really able to come to my house very often and do anything during that that spring area before this intrusion. Now, in addition, her personal hygiene began to deteriorate, and because of medicine she was taking, she had to urinate frequently during the day. It reached a point where she couldn't get to the bathroom. So I had to be there just to, first I had to pick her up off the chair and walk her to the bathroom with a walker. And then it became a point where I had to wheel her to the bathroom, and it just deteriorated from there on. And then finally in May and June, she had to go to the hospital several times, and at which point hospice came in and they took care of her, but at her house. So I was still at her house through June, and well, hospice came in and put all sorts of equipment. They put oxygen in the place and new beds and all sorts of crazy stuff that I don't even know what it is. They changed all of her medication out, which was very difficult because I didn't even know what any of this stuff was, but she couldn't handle it. I had to take this over and figure out what pills to give her and when, and it just became mind-boggling. I had to give her a pain medication every 2 hours, and even just the last few weeks, 6 months, she passed away in July, and even now I find it hard to sleep. I wake up after 2 hours, and it's very, very difficult, and I can't even get a good night's sleep anymore. But anyway, this has been kind of my problem, and trying to deal with all of this at the same time. Again, Homestead came and attacked me for my homestead exemption. I had to have a hearing for that, which I have now had postponed till February. And let's see, I just don't want to forget anything here. But I did get into an insurance claim. The insurance was for only $100,000, and I had an insurance investigator come in. I guess it was November, beginning of November, November 1st, I believe it was, because it was the same day the certified letter was delivered to me. And he didn't come up with the report until December 22nd. And he filed it with the insurance company, and on December 29th, the insurance company made up a check for, let's see, $40,400 and change. I don't have it right here. And with that, they made a claim that, you know, this was their analysis, that the repairs would be $56,000 and they would take $14,000 out of for depreciation. So they gave me $40,000, but there's also a little clause in the policy that states I cannot make any further claim against the insurance company once I deposit the check. So I'm sitting here with a check now, and everybody I speak to, especially the city, says it's going to cost a lot more than $40,000. So to that end, I did have a contractor look at it. He agrees it should be more. I thought it'd be probably double that, but obviously people here think it should be more than double that. Contractor agreed with me, and he said, well, one way I could approach it is a mold analysis. So he got a lady in on Tuesday. It was the same day Mr. Palmer showed up to give me the copies here. I was waiting on the lawn actually for the mold inspector, and she came in. She finally showed up at 5 o'clock and did an analysis, which I should get the report hopefully next week, which I would then have to send to the insurance company and try to argue with them to get more money. Now the problem at the beginning when I was cleaning out the house was I knew I had to make an insurance claim all along. So even though I was cleaning out my personal stuff, I had to leave the house as is because the insurance adjuster would have to see it that way. My personal property was not covered in the insurance, only the house. So I was kind of, every time I went in to do something, I had multiple reasons to do it this way, not that way, or whatever, besides raising the funds, the money. So let me just go make sure I didn't forget any goodies. After Hurricane Irma, okay. I had applied for new permits after Hurricane Irma for my shed and for the fence and for the roof. I had the roof of the house. I had gotten a permit in April, previous April, but a friend of mine who was supposed to help me injured his leg and couldn't stand up. And as a result, I couldn't do anything on my roof. I couldn't do it by myself. But I had done a number of roofs with this gentleman before, and so I was counting on him. But when it came up for renewal, I requested a renewal, and it was denied. So I did put in for a permit request for the shed, the hole in the roof of the shed. I don't agree that the shed has to come down. That the hole in that roof is simply in the plywood, and of course the shingles over it. The roof, that shed was built with pressure-treated lumber, and I don't see any disintegration in it at all from the inside. So I would like to repair that. I don't know what the house is going to be. It depends on how much I'm going to get from the insurance company. And let's see, what am I forgetting? Let's see, the shed, permits. Okay, yeah, I did get the fence permit, but then springtime came around, I couldn't get to the house because I was caregiving for the lady. And then in May, well, they demolished the pool. City came in and demolished the pool, at which point I was no longer required to have a fence. So I simply let it expire. It expired in June. As far as a permit for the shed, I never heard back from it. Nobody ever called me to tell me it was ready. So that's just, and I just got involved in everything else, so I couldn't follow up on it either, which is undoubtedly my fault. But in the bottom line is now I still have to deal with the insurance company and a bit of money, and I have to have a little bit of time to go and sell another property, which I'm also going to sell at a loss, but at least it'll bring some cash into the fold. But I have to go down south and take care of that also. That'll be gone for probably 10 or 15 days. And basically all I'm asking for is a little bit more time. I need time to allow these things that are not under my control. I can't control what the insurance company does other than fight them. I can't control how long it takes the assessor to make up his report, or even the mold report. I assume it'll be within a week, but it may not be. But I'm just simply asking for a little bit more time to deal with this.
Define a little bit, please.
I'm looking at 90 days at least.
Okay. I'd like to ask Mr. Palmer a question while you're here.
Sure.
Mr. Palmer, when was the first time that Mr. Schmitz appeared before the Code Enforcement Board, and for what purpose?
It was August 18th, 2016. It was for the case 1573, which was for property condition and the roof. At the, hold on one second. The property owner stated at that, under oath, that he was trying to sell property down south. And as soon as he did, he would use the money to help bring the property into compliance. At that time, the code board gave him 6 months to bring the property into compliance. After the 6 months, he appeared back in front of you, and
Yes.
the property was liened.
The property was
Because nothing
liened?
had been done, yes.
Because it hadn't been done.
Yes.
Is that the only lien the city has against the property?
I do have the lien amounts, if you would like to bear with me. There is a lien, current running lien on the property that as a total as of today is $33,900. The pool removal lien is not a running lien, it's a special assessment lien, and that is $22,725.50.
So that gets us to 55,700 and some odd cents.
A grand total of $56,625.50.
Thank you. Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
I do. Do you live there at this address?
No, I was spending the nights at the lady's house at the beginning, and as it got more and more, I couldn't even get back there. I spent the nights at the lady's house for, I guess, 4 years. That's what it was originally designed. But now it's become unlivable since the hurricane. So no, nobody's living in the thing. I go in as much as I can just to clean stuff out and throw stuff away. And so far, I've been able to salvage mostly scrap metal, but that's.
Your thoughts, gentlemen and ladies? Lady.
Excuse me?
Is that the end of your presentation?
I'm looking.
Checking his notes. And you, sir, have the right to question anyone that participated in the inspection of your house, so they're all here. If you have a question that you'd like satisfied.
See, I guess my main concern was that basically it was the time element at this. The order, I mean, you saw all of the things that were in the yard, some of which I have already removed, but all the things that were there and the damage that was there. And according to this, I only have 10 days to clean that up. At the same time, I'm supposed to try to earn a living so I can eat. And then after that, doing everything else, the building department says I should be replacing all 3 roofs, removing all of the drywall, getting all of the mold out, having it all tested. And to get the mold out, they want me to rip up the rugs. Well, in order to rip up the rugs, you have to take off everything that's on top of the rugs first. And they want 30 days to do that. They said I have to get a permit for this stuff and then conclude everything in 30 days. It's just not realistic. I can't imagine it being possible to do that in 30 days. Even putting 3 roofs on in 30 days would be impossible.
Are your property taxes paid on that house?
I think I'm 1 year behind at this point.
Actually, it's 2.
2?
Is it 2?
Yes, sir.
I thought it was paid 2 years ago.
Okay.
Are you talking this year as 1?
If Madam Chairman would like the details, Mr. Morley will provide those to you.
According to the Brevard County Property Appraiser, there is $1,919.16 due from 2017 and $2,165.09 due from 2018 for a total of $4,084.25 due.
And do you also have a mortgage on the house with Wells Fargo?
It was an equity line, yes.
And is it still open?
It's maxed out. It's still there, yeah. It's maxed out. So basically the tax you're talking about was this year's tax and last year, so I'm only 1 year behind. This year's isn't due yet.
No, you're about to be in arrears for the second time. Okay.
Okay.
We have one other potential witness this evening, and that's Mr. Campbell, strictly for evidentiary information.
One moment.
1 moment, okay.
Give Mr. Schmitz the opportunity to finish and then.
Oh, I was under the impression he had, I'm sorry.
Well, that's what I'm just making sure.
I guess I am too.
Mr. Schmidt, do you have any documents that you want to submit into the record? If you do, this is your chance.
Yeah, I have building permits, but I think the city has copies of those too.
Do you have any documents with you that you were prepared to present into evidence this evening? No.
Documents, no. Nothing that.
Okay, thank you.
I can't give you my insurance certificate because I need that.
Okay.
I have a question, just one.
Are you speaking in the mic?
Oh, if the,
there you go.
How long do you think it would take you to get whatever it is you think is of value, personal property, it's in that house now, to get it out? How long is it going to take you?
I only have one pickup truck and I'm 72 years old. I have a bad back and everything and arthritis and the whole thing. I can only make one trip a day. I can fill up a pickup truck, so I'm looking at probably 2 months just to get out my stuff.
You believe you have 2 months worth of stuff that's still not moldy and viable and of value to you?
Well, I would take the moldy stuff out at the same time. I'd take that out and throw it.
Well, I'm asking you though, just to get the stuff you value out of that house, how long do you think it would take you?
Probably 1 month.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Campbell?
Okay. Oh, hold one second.
Okay.
1 second.
Go, Brian, go.
I would like to answer some of the statements that Mr. Schmidt had made. The permits that he acquired, one was for the fence, one was for the roof. Permits have expired. It's like not having a permit per the building code, and the building official can speak on that. The pool was removed, that's true, so it does not need a pool barrier. However, the fence is dilapidated, and you cannot have a dilapidated fence per the code. The fence is still there, and it's still dilapidated. If he was to remove the fence, but he hasn't, the fence is still there, it's still dilapidated, it's still a hazard for anybody that may wander back there. It can be a hazard.
And it requires a survey to put in a new one.
Yes, ma'am. The roof permit, and the building official can correct me if I'm mistaken, the roof permit, due to the damage after the storm, the reason why the roof permit, reopening of the roof permit was denied is because the building official asked his permission to go on the roof because the building official was concerned that the original scope of work wasn't enough.
Okay.
So that's why it was denied. We weren't trying to keep him from repairing his roof. We wanted to make sure he repaired it and, you know, safely and get the whole roof repaired within that scope of work.
Was the permit app for repair or replace?
It was for a repair. I'm sorry? Okay, I'm gonna defer that to the building official then. I'm not the building.
I do believe it was to replace, but I asked permission to go on the roof actually to see if there was any additional damage. Structural damage is what I was worried about. I was denied that.
Okay.
And that same goes with the shed. He says he had never heard anything about the shed. I did ask permission to go back and look at that, and was denied that as well. So.
Okay.
The time frames in the notice of violation aren't set by the city. City staff didn't set those time frames. Those time frames are set in the standard unsafe building abatement code. They're already set in there. We don't have anything to do that. We can't change those times. We can't do anything about it. That's what that states in there. So
beyond your scope.
yes. Once a permit has been applied for and has been picked up, and everything is ready, and they're doing work at that time. As long as you're having inspections, regular inspections, then that permit can keep going, and that, you know, that time frame keeps going because they're having regular inspections. As soon as you stop having regular inspections, the permit goes away. It expires, and it's like not having a permit at all. The exterior of the property, the cleaning and repairing of the exterior of the property, the trash and debris, the mowing of the backyard, the removal of the fence if that's what he wishes to do, that can be done by just removing the trash and debris. That hasn't been done. The trash and debris has been there for 3 years, and nothing's been done with it. The fence was originally repaired back at the beginning in 2016. The fence was originally repaired, the storm came through, the fence fell down, and the fence still hadn't been removed. There's still portions of fence laying in the backyard where they fell when the wind blew them over. I would like to now call Mr. Campbell up so he can testify. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Before you do that, I was going to ask Madam Chair if I could respond to something else that Mr. Schmidt said.
Okay.
Mr. Schmidt testified about a pole, and I don't remember the exact word that he used, but I call it a screw jack, but it's probably the wrong words. It's another word that describes that, but let's call it a jack.
It's a jack.
His testimony was that it was positioned in a place to stop a piece of sagging drywall, and that may very well have been his intention. But I want to address that specific thing because that specific thing was also addressed in my report as an area of structural concern. The purpose of it being there may very well have been for drywall. However, that's an excellent place for this to be because it's directly in line with the bearing end of one of the most significantly damaged trusses that we could see. In this area, the drywall is missing. You can see the bearing end of the truss setting on top of the concrete block, and this is about 3 feet back from that, and it's directly under that truss, as if to hold that truss in place should that cave in. In my report, I discuss that specific location, and there are 2 photographs that show structural deterioration from of the wood. And specifically what happens as wood rots and has an active rot, it's called wet rot, the wood becomes blackened. And after it becomes blackened, it just starts to fall away, and then pretty soon it disintegrates. In that specific location, the truss and the tail end of the truss is blackened with significant wet rot, and the roof sheathing is gone. So that bearing end location of that truss is highly suspect and causes me to suspect this whole area may have a lot more of that we didn't see.
There was an example of the wet rot you're talking about on a door, picture of a door, wooden door in the bottom 8 to 10 inches across, had the rot showing like that.
And also the underside of the roof decking on the porch.
Right.
It's probably 80% all black and gone.
It would concern me, actually, for Mr. Schmitz to be working in the house. I personally don't consider it a safe place for him to be.
And speaking of the deterioration of wood on the porch beam, you can see that at least half of it is disintegrated. That at one time would have been black, and then as it disintegrates, it falls away, and it reduces the actual size of the beam, which also reduces its carrying capacity, which makes it impossible to support a load eventually.
Thank you. Yes, sir, Mr. Dickey.
Mrs. Chairman, too, I don't think we've really gone into detail about the mold situation in the house, and I don't know if the board members have had a chance to go through the mold report, but I think it's significant, not just for the public health, but for Mr. Schmidt's health as well, that this is, our mold expert has determined this is toxic mold in the house. And that's from a public safety, public health viewpoint, that's a significant issue. And I just want to make sure that that gets in the record and the board is aware of that. That's not a matter that we should lightly dismiss. I'm not saying we're dismissing it. I just think it's insignificant to keep that in mind.
Thank you. Okay. Everybody, go, Brian.
Okay, I would just like to call Mr. Campbell up to, he could testify to the conditions and stuff that he's actually been living with for past how many years? Mr. Campbell?
Could Frank talk first? He's in Surf Drive. He's been sworn in. He lives across the street from me, and he had sent you a complaint at one point about this.
This is evidentiary comments that you are making, not personal.
Yes, only factual comments.
Only factual content.
Yes.
And would you state your name for us?
I'm Frank Harris. I live at 306 Surf Drive, which is right across from Patrick. And basically, I just want to encourage you to deal with this issue sooner rather than later. To me, it's not only a nuisance, but it's also a health hazard out there. And I also want to thank the city for taking care of the pool issue, because I didn't used to be able to go out in my yard without being attacked by mosquitoes, no matter what month it was of the year. And that seems to have been taken care of since May.
Okay. So. Just the pool was a major hazard.
It certainly, well, I think the house in its condition is a health hazard.
But you preface you preface that, sir, with "I think."
Yes.
And we need facts.
Well, that's what I think, because I live there and I see the vermin in the neighborhood.
Okay.
And I don't want to be living across the street from a whole bunch of toxic mold. So that's what I think. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell.
My name is Patrick Campbell. I live at 307 Surf Drive, and that's immediately east of Jerry's property. We share the east. My west property line is his east property line.
Okay.
Okay. So it seems like, first somebody say, I don't want to be here. I'm sure Jerry doesn't want to be here. I don't think you want to be here. The problem is, out of all of us, I live there. Okay. So I'm the one that experiences the moment with that property. You had asked a question about how long, when was the first time you've dealt with this? When was the first time he'd been before the board? Mm-hmm. I would tell you and by the way, the public record that the city has on this property is huge. I would encourage you to go look at your own website and go to the public records, the public records request. There is a folder, my folder, that has hundreds and hundreds of pages about this property. So you asked when you first dealt with it. The first violation that your system has on this property was 4/19/1990. And it was for some of the conditions that are still there today. Some of the same stuff. Then it went from 4/21/2008. That's when the pool popped out of the ground. I think somewhere in the time frame of 2008, the pool popped out of the ground. And as Frank said, from that point forward, the pool was simply popped out of the ground full of green, stagnant water for 10 years. Okay. Literally could not go out in my backyard. The city's attention kind of peaked when I sent them a little boy died in Daytona Beach, so I sent an email to the city saying, look, are you going to wait till this happens here to do something about this? 10 years later to get that pool out. So we talked about the fact there's a lien on the property. I think your math's wrong. I think the lien's $35,100 at this point. $100 the first day, $50 every day after since February of 17. Is that right? And then there's the $22,000 lien for pulling the pool out. So there's a substantial lien on the property already. I guess, and we talk about cleaning it up. So I'm glad somebody mentioned about the toxicity of the mold. What you don't see on the pictures, what you don't get to experience, is the smell coming from that house in the summertime. Okay? It's overwhelming. You can smell it walking by the property. What you don't get to experience is the fact that that huge rubber tree that's growing up through the abandoned boat hull on my property line, what you don't get to see is what it did to my sprinkler system and my line set for my air conditioner. Okay? You don't get to see that. So as far as how long, we're talking about a little time frame, 10 days. Well, 10 years, 28 years from 1990 this has been going on, that I've had to live next door to this. So it isn't a matter of give me a few more days. There's just something fundamentally wrong with getting something done. And it's not getting done. The only time anything got done is when the city came in and pulled the pool out. So I'm begging you, again, and you can look through the plethora of information I've left on the website, I'm begging you, take an abatement action on this property and clean it up. It's not gonna get done if you don't. And I'm really, quite frankly, I'm tired of living next to this mess. Talk about the fence. I had a fence contractor come out. I wanted, okay, if I can't get it fixed, then make it where I don't have to look at it. Fence contractor came out and said, I'll take care of your west fence, your east fence, but I can't touch the west fence because the city had put the plastic barrier for the pool up and had a big sign on it saying, I can't remember, I got a picture of it, but talks about do not enter, do not touch, don't mess with this. That plastic fence, red plastic fence that was put there in September of 2017 is still there today. So I can't even put up a fence. In addition to that, this abandoned boat hole with a rubber tree growing through it, the fence contractor said, I need 2 feet. I can't put a fence up unless you can get that moved. So I'm just stuck with this. I can't put a fence up. I can't get it cleaned up. I gotta live next door to it. Please help me with this. This isn't a matter of giving a few more days. This is a matter of taking some action, much like you did with the pool.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate your long-standing patience.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
If it would please the board, the city arborist is here and he can talk to the 2 invasive trees that are there. He did a report on both of them.
Okay. Where's our arborist? Right over here.
Real quick, before we move any further and people start running out the doors, if you've given testimony tonight, I need you to sign in on this piece of paper, please.
All right, hi, I'm Tim Davis. I am the certified arborist for the city, and I did the reports on the 2 trees in question.
Tim, can you speak into the mic more, please?
Okay.
There you
Sorry
go.
about that.
That's good.
Yes, so do you have any kind of questions? The tree
What
is...
the 2 trees are?
One's a Schefflera, and then the other one in question, the rubber tree, is a ficus tree. It's in the ficus family. And it is on the invasive list, and it's probably one of the most invasive species we have, and as far as my opinion.
Both are invasive, aren't they?
Oh, yes. And, pepper tree, there's a bunch of them, but the ficus trees in general, they, the roots are just extremely invasive, and they'll search out water. Like the gentleman said, it probably got his sprinkler and the other lines, but, that was only my concern being an arborist, because, they will seek out water. And he has a pool in the background, in the backyard.
So if they're removed, they may not be replaced by the same species.
Right, correct, yeah.
Okay. I should have said when they're removed, because that would be part of the cleanup of the yard.
Yes, the city encourages the invasive stuff to be removed anyway, and then if they get to the point where they're that big, then it really starts becoming a problem.
Okay.
What is the range of the root system of these, say just the tree that's on the property line?
By rule, they're usually as big as their drip line, which their branches reach out. So the tree is, if I had to guess, it had to be over 15 years old, because the aerial roots that are coming down now, they're like this big around, and they start off just like a little skinny root, and then eventually they get bigger and bigger and bigger. So that root system's probably all over the place. Not just that way, it's probably all on his property,
Okay.
Because we deal with it all the time. I just went to a tree inspection today with a ficus tree with plumbing issues. They're somehow they like to find the sewer lines and everything.
When you say all over the place, you mean not only the subject property, 305 Surf, but the neighbor, Mr. Campbell's property as well?
Yeah, they're probably under his foundation. When we first looked in there, I could see some of the roots going in his door. They were small, but they were going in the door, And they were trying to go up the wall. They'll go everywhere if you let them.
Thank you. We appreciate you giving us your evening.
Okay.
May I ask you something?
Yes, sir.
I'm confused about the Schefflera tree. Is that tree that's...
It's the one with the real big leaves. It's up underneath it. It's growing.
Sorry, probably come up to the...
Yeah.
Me?
Mr. Schmitz.
Yeah, Mr. Schmidt, you're entitled to ask any cross-examination questions that you want. Just please come to the
We
mic.
just need to
when
hear
do.
you on the mic.
I didn't consider it a cross-examination, I just.
Well, I do, but
asked
that's,
for an-
you're entitled to question him.
I just needed to, I was a bit confused which was the Cheffalera.
The Cheffalera is growing underneath it. That's the one that's actually doing a lot of damage to your soffit and the
It's
fascia
the one
right
on
there.
the east side of the house.
Yeah, it's got like, I don't know, 10 limbs, 10 liters on it.
Tim, is it correct to say that the rubber tree is growing through the boat? And the
Oh, yeah.
and the Cheffalera is more on the front of the house?
Cheffalera would be in the front,
Yeah.
I was there when I bought the house.
Yeah, it's kind of like in between the tree and the house, yeah.
All right, I just needed to know.
Thank you.
I have, by the way, I have no problem with removing those. I did consult someone and I did get an estimate on removing those 2 trees, and that would be part of my agenda if we could get this a little bit of time.
Okay.
Tim's report goes on to talk about the rubber tree having aerial roots. And can you talk to us about how they propagate and spread a little bit?
Well, that's how they do it. As the branches grow out more, they just start growing downward. Like I said, at first they look like little roots, and they just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. If you look at some of those pictures, they were all over the place. If you really look at them, it just looked like a maze of roots is basically what it is.
And if you take the tree out, what do you have to apply
Well,
to the stump and the roots to
Yeah, you would have to
kill it?
stump grind it, probably.
And
I
those-
wouldn't just flush cut it and leave it alone. It would probably grow back.
Is our good helper for the keep Cape Canaveral beautiful, Mr. Hale over here. Okay, thank you, Jimmy. All right, thank you.
All right, you're
Anybody else have a question? All righty.
The boat or the tree is growing once again through the boat. To remove the dilapidated boat, the tree would have to be removed.
Sure.
Along with the fences and everything else that's back there.
Set of dominoes.
Yes, ma'am. If you don't have any more questions for anybody or any more, ready to go with our recommendation.
We're ready to hear it.
Staff respectfully requests the following motion be approved. Based on the testimony and evidence submitted at the hearing, the Code Board finds and concludes that 1, proper notice of the violation and notice of hearing was provided to respondent and mortgagee, Wells Fargo Bank N.A. Number 2, respondent's appeal is without merit and is denied, and therefore the building officials and the code enforcement officer's determination that the property is unsafe, unsanitary, unfit for human occupancy, and a public nuisance is upheld. And 3, the city is entitled to proceed to abate the nuisance and otherwise proceed in accordance with law. Additionally, in furtherance of the Code Board's finding and conclusions, the Code Board orders: 1, respondents must remedy the violations stated in the notice of violation within the time periods required by law. If the violations are not timely remedied, the city is entitled to proceed to abate the nuisance and otherwise proceed in accordance with law. And number 2, respondent must contact the City of Cape Canaveral building official at 321-868-1220, extension 114, and take all unnecessary action required by the building official and code enforcement officers in accordance with law to timely remedy the violations. I have a copy of this motion.
You want this entered, do we need to enter this as evidence? Or it's just supplementary material, correct?
That's the code officer.
Just making sure. So he just printed it out for us.
Could I have that one of those back, Mary? 'Cause
You
I'd
may
like to
have them,
say
but it's
something.
2 separate pages.
It's time to comment. on
You,
staff's
sir, have
request.
time to comment.
Well, if I understood the gentleman correctly, the homeowner, he did not contest any of the findings
No,
as
sir.
to the condition of the property. What he was seeking is time. And I've read his letter, and his issue was the time constraints, and he didn't have the money, and he thinks some of it was exaggerated. But when he stepped up, he said he's not contesting the findings. So, in terms of the staff recommendation, I have no difficulty with the motion that there was proper notice to him and the bank. I believe that's documented in the record. I didn't hear any testimony about it, I don't think, but it's in the record. To say that his appeal is without merit and denied, I think, is a little harsh, given the very limited nature of what he was here seeking. We may not wish to grant him more time, but it makes it sound like it was frivolous. And I don't think that's quite fair to the homeowner. And those are just my comments on the verbiage of the staff recommendation. And the last thing I'd say is they want an order, or however it comes out, that if the violations are not timely remedied, I think that should be date specific.
Well, that's the part, as I understand it, that we don't control the amount of time that's granted.
But I think in fairness, the date should be part of the ruling that he gets. By what date is this supposed to occur? You know, that we don't need that for further interpretation down the road.
Is that dated from our meeting tonight, or from the time that?
I don't know.
I'm asking. I'm looking past you at Anthony.
I'd like to just comment about that. This is an unsafe building code issue and property maintenance abatement. It's a nuisance abatement action. The time periods for him to come in compliance are established in the code by law. The board, it's not within the board's purview to change those time periods, in my opinion, and you know, he has that set time period to bring the matter into compliance.
What is that time period?
The time period for, under the unsafe building code, for all the structural damage is that he must commence construction within 60 days of the notice provided by the building official, the notice of violation. Now, he filed a notice of appeal, so that abates the time period. So I think his notice of appeal was filed, what, the 30th or something. He had, if the board were to adopt a motion such as this, the time period would commence again once the board's order is entered, and he would have the remaining balance of that time to come in compliance pursuant to the unsafe building code. That's probably somewhere circa maybe 30 days or so.
It's short.
And now under the exterior property maintenance code, the code requires once a notice of violation is cited, they have 10 days to come into compliance on the exterior property maintenance. And if they don't, then the city can proceed in accordance with law at its police power discretion to abate the nuisance.
As to the exterior.
Yeah, as to the exterior. Now and same thing goes to the unsafe building code violations for the structure, but not until the time is up. Right. So he would arguably
but the time is limited.
The time is limited.
Well, yeah.
Right.
The issue is it 30 days from today, or is it 40? I mean, that's the question.
Yeah, it's just, again, they got abated once the notice of appeal was filed, so he has approximately 30 days remaining if the board were to deny the appeal, and then we would proceed accordingly and let the matter play out pursuant to the codes that were adopted by the city council.
What was the date of the notice of violation?
October 30th, I believe.
I think that's right.
Does sound right. I just don't.
I think what we're dealing with here is a history of redundancy on what happens when he comes in here and gets 10, 20, 30, 40, 80 more days.
I understand, but to your point, you were saying we couldn't change the time period.
Right.
Council has explained to us what the time periods are.
Okay.
He has 30 days left.
Right.
Okay.
And a long way to get there.
Oh, I'm not going to say more.
That's 30 days for the structure.
Correct.
You know, I would say this, and I understand, Mr. Smith, you've had extenuating circumstances over the last couple of years, and you've had some financial issues and health issues, and I understand that and empathize with you on that. By the same token, I would also say, and Mr. Campbell's testimony was somewhat compelling here, this matter has been going on for some extended period of time. And I feel that based on the condition of this home, being in an unsafe condition and unlivable, that some action needs to be taken immediately for the safety and welfare not only of yourself, but for the public.
We don't have a motion on the floor. We're still discussing putting one up there so we can continue to discuss. Is that correct?
You can, yes, you can. It's up to the board's prerogative if you want to accept more additional evidence.
Basically, no, I'm sorry. I didn't hear. Basically, I mean, 30 days from today would be a totally impossible task. You can't even get one roof done in 30 days these days. You can't even get a roofer to come in, and I can't do it by myself anymore. I have to get a professional roofer. But what I was asking was the time to raise the money. You need to get over that thought
right now, because you're not going to be allowed to do your own roof.
I know that. I can't. So. I can't do that anyway. What I'm asking is simply enough time for some funds to come through. I have been trying, you know, like I said, the insurance company is not going to.
Mr. Smits, that's the same story you told us 2 years ago, selling property in Miami.
I did, and I had a situation there, and because of the code enforcement hearings, I lost the sale of that property, and it was postponed a year. I ended up selling it a year later. I took another loss on the thing, and by then I was another $30,000, $40,000 in debt. So the money had to go to kind of salvage what was left of my credit report. But that was not the intent. If that had gone through at the time, I would have had that cash and this thing would have been resolved 3 years ago. But it hit the fan, and there wasn't much it could do. Sometimes life just gets in the way of living.
Okay. Thank you for your statement, and we'd like to hear from Mr. Campbell now.
Yes, please.
I appreciate Mr. Clooney's focus on taking prudent action, but I want to remind Mr. Clooney of the code enforcement minutes of 8/20/2015.
When Mr. Clooney was not in Florida.
Mr. Clooney was at this meeting, 8/20/2015. Clooney wants to see property owner Smits made aware of what's needed to bring him into full compliance. Full compliance requirements were made known to Mr. Smith on 4/21/2008. Smith's given until 9/17/2015 to come into compliance, or $75 first day, $25 each day thereafter. Fine was never implemented. Mr. Clooney dissented. So somewhere there is a document that I pulled from your site that has those words in it, and I'll go pull the original. So when we talk about time frames and we talk about give me a few more days, I mean, this is years. So, thank you.
Mr. Clooney's been living a double life. How long have you been on the board now, sir?
I wouldn't have thought it was 3 years.
I don't think it is either.
I don't think so.
No, so I don't know.
As I said, been living a double life. Okay, here we are.
Just real quick. The notice of violation states that the property owner must obtain the permit to repair and or demolish a single-family home and 2 accessory structures within 30 days from the date that the property owner receives actual, or once you rule, if you rule, you know, that it's thing, then that starts. It also states that mold remediation work shall be completed within 30 days of issuance of a building permit. So he gets a building permit 30 days, and he has 30 days to do the remedial work. Then,
that's mold remediation specific, though, correct?
Yes. Then, and then it states all other required non-structural repairs to bring the single-family home and 2 accessory structures into compliance with city code shall be completed within 60 days of issuance of a building permit. I just want to make sure everybody knows the time frames here. Once again, the exterior of the property was 10 days. 10 days has elapsed prior to the appeal. We're looking at the house itself now.
Right.
So he has, if the board goes with staff's recommendation, he has 30 days to come and get a permit. He can apply for the permit. The building official can speak on how long it may take him. I don't know if he could speak on that without looking at the application. Then 30 days after the issuance, he has to get rid of the mold. Then 60 days after the issuance of the other structural permits, he has to start the work. So, I mean, we could do the math real quick. I wasn't.
Brian, I don't think that's necessary. I think the motion that you provided, the time periods are in the notice of violation. Mr. Schmidt would get an abeyance given the notice of appeal, and then once the board renders its decision, the clock starts again, and we follow the time periods that are in the notice of violation. I do not think it's appropriate or required for the board to actually do the math and then state all of those time periods in the motion. It is inferred and stated in the notice of violation.
I completely disagree, and I'll tell you why.
That's fine.
Your opinion was he has 30 days left. We just heard, according to staff, that he has 30 days to seek, to get a permit for the building. We're talking about the building.
He has to obtain
not
a permit.
the yard. He's got 30 days to get a permit for that. And if he did it, then he'd have 60 days to get it done. So is it 30 days if we enter this motion, or is it 30 to get a permit and 60 more to get something done? I think the homeowner's entitled to know it. I'd like to know. Sounded to me like 30 days was a pretty good deal, but now staff is indicating he's got 30 days to go get a permit after we do something today, and then he's got 60 days to fix the house.
All board members have a copy of the notice of violation.
Sure. All I'm asking is, I just think the motion should tell him what the date is. That's all.
And the notice of violation does that.
Okay.
So the notice of violation tells him that he has 30 days, and those dates start once you sign for the notice of violation. So the date that he signed for the notice of violation, that's when it started. He appealed, so now the 30 days would start today. If you guys ruled this way, that's when the 30 days would start, and that's exactly what the city attorney had stated.
Well, that's not at all what I understood. I already had 30 days and everything is over. You're saying he has 30 days to get a permit, to apply for a permit. And then, after, if it's granted, then he has more time to get something done. Is that correct? Is that what
I'm going to refer to the building official. It's his notice of violation.
No, I would say, and I agree with Mr. Palmer, it's stated clearly in the code of the time limit that runs from the date of the permit, as I understand it. So it says, and the motion is based on the law, and this is the law, as I understand it.
And just so I want to clarify my comment, I said he had 60 days in which to commence construction on the structural issues involving the property. So
that 60-day deal. Yeah.
That's the 60-day deal.
But you said 30 of that was gone.
Right, to commence construction.
Right, so that would leave 30. But what we just heard is he has 30 days to get a permit, and then 60 days to get the work done after permit's issued.
Now,
well, I don't know. I'm not.
Well, I'm gonna.
Well, Mr. Clooney, I think that's what our city attorney is attempting to do: is give the board clarification and guidance. So my suggestion is, Mr. Garganese, provide that to the board.
My suggestion is that we get a clear reconciliation between what staff just said, which makes sense, and what the attorney just said, which makes sense.
And Mr. Clooney,
if I may.
Can I just have just a minute? Because I'll walk through this with the board if it's important to you.
Well, I'd like to know.
The notice of violation states, with respect to the single-family home and the 2 accessory structures, that Mr. Schmidt was required within 30 days from the date that he received the notice of violation to pull a permit. Okay?
Right.
Now, now let's go to demolition. If the property owner elects to demolish the single-family home, the work required to demolish the single-family home and the 2 accessory structures shall be completed within 30 days from the date of the demolition permit issued by the building official.
Okay.
If he elects demolition. Now, if he elects repair, the mold remediation shall be completed within 30 days of issuance of the building permit. Now, keep in mind, the building permit's required to be issued within 30 days of the notice of violation. Once the permit's issued, he gets another 30 days in which to complete mold remediation. Then the notice of violation goes on to state that the completion of the repairs, the permitted repairs and/or demolition stated in the notice of violation shall be 60 days from the date that the property owner receives the notice of violation, which goes to the 60-day period that I previously advised the board. They have 60 days from the date of the notice of violation to complete the repairs. But given the fact he filed a notice of appeal, my opinion is that that 60-day time period gets abated.
And then the default section should take care of anything that doesn't get done in 60 days. Am I right? The paragraph C, time periods default. I think I'm reading where you are.
What's the question on that?
Failure to accomplish what you said you were going to do in 60 days,
right.
Then default takes over.
Right. That would constitute a default if you can't timely make the repairs and/or demolition as required by the codes. Keeping in mind that this is a nuisance abatement action. It's staff's opinion that this property is a public nuisance. The objective is...
That's not disputed by the homeowner.
Which is not disputed by the homeowner.
Which is not an issue tonight.
Right.
So drop that one.
I don't know who keeps bringing it up. It's not an issue on this appeal. The issue is just how much time does he have before they bring in the bulldozer? That's all I want to know.
And I think Mr. Garganese just explained that.
So 30 days? Is that your understanding?
You'd like to ask Mr. Garganese again? I'm sure he'd be happy to provide you with that same information.
Well, you seem very clear on what it is, and I'd appreciate it if you would educate me. What is it that you believe it to be?
I believe, consistent with Mr. Garganese's statement.
So 30 days?
Well,
I'm just.
You're not going to.
It's a valid question, and I'm trying to explain it.
Answer the valid question.
I mean, first and foremost, the property owner has an election to make with respect to the nuisance declared for the structures. That property owner Mr. Schmidt, can elect to demolish, or he can elect to repair. And either way, he needs to pull the permit. So, regardless, under the unsafe building code, he has 60 days to commence the construction or the demolition. If not, it constitutes a default, at which point then the city, in accordance with law, has a decision to make.
Right. So is it 30 days from today? If we adopt this motion, he has 30 days before he's in default.
Again, when was his notice of appeal filed?
They received November 30th.
November 30th? So I would say he was served on November...
October.
No, it was...
October 30, wasn't it?
But he was served on November 3rd, maybe?
The notice?
Yes.
Right? His notice of appeal...
He signed for the notice? For his notice of appeal?
Well, I'll walk through it with you here. When was he served?
The notice of violation or the notice of appeal?
Notice of violation.
It's October the 3rd.
October the 3rd.
The notice of violation is dated October 30th.
Yes, and he received it on 11/1.
Oh, he received it on 11/1.
Yes.
Okay. And his notice of appeal was filed when?
On November 30th.
All right, so that's 29 days. So on November 30th, the time period went into abeyance pending the outcome of this hearing. So depending on the board's decision, if the board were to deny the appeal, the board chairman would have to execute the order. Let's say the order gets executed tomorrow. He would then be given 31 days from the date of the order to complete what needs to be completed. Or commence construction or demolition.
Okay. Not that complicated. I think it's only fair to make it clear to the affected property owners. The neighbor as well. I'm sorry, I wish it would disappear tomorrow for you, but it's gonna go. It's just, is it tomorrow or is it 30 days? I don't know. But it's not tomorrow under the law. Okay, that's fair?
Something.
Sure.
It's been going on for 28 years.
Understand.
Is it my understanding also that he has 30 days to commence repairs, but these periods run concurrently. If it goes to demo, that would be 60 days.
Concurrency statement.
According to 302, it says the time periods required to obtain the necessary permits and demolition and or repair of the single-family structure and two accessory structures shall run concurrently. And the maximum time period, and it goes on to state, will be 60 days. Is that my understanding?
The maximum time period is 60 days. Right. Again, there are elections that need to be made to abate the nuisance. He could repair, he could demolish. And there's different variables there. Could repair the house, demolish the shed, demolish the house, keep the shed. That decision has not been made, and permits have not been submitted for the city to even evaluate where we go. But regardless, there is a maximum time period in the unsafe building code that must be taken into consideration.
Are we through talking about time periods?
I just wonder if demolishing the house and just selling the land might be cheaper than trying to fix it.
That's a decision you'll have to decide to elect or not elect, as the case may be. Okay. The chair is ready to entertain a motion regarding the staff's recommendation.
Make a motion. We accept staff recommendation.
And do we have a second?
I second.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, call the vote.
Ms. Russell?
4.
Mr. Clooney?
4.
Mr. Howe?
4.
Mr. Hartley?
4.
Ms. Stone?
4.
And there it is. We thank everybody for their cooperation tonight and for your civility, which we tested a little bit, but that's done, and thank you. You're excused.